You're listening to the Entrepreneur's Agony Aunt podcast, keeping it real, telling the story like it is, because there are no mistakes that somebody else hasn't already made. Hello, I'm Vicky Brock, and you're listening to the Entrepreneur Agony Aunt podcast. Today I'm with Cathy McCabe, CEO of Proximity Insight, a global retail platform enabling customer journeys across all retail touchpoints. Cathy is former Chief Information Officer of Retail Jaeger and VP of IT at Burberry. And when I met her earlier this year, the advice she gave me triggered one of those rare moments of clarity where all the challenges you've been facing finally make sense. So I wanted to share some of that wisdom with you. So welcome, Cathy. Thank you for joining me as an agony aunt.
Hello, lovely to see you again.
So we've got two questions today. The first is from a non-technical founder who's struggling to find good technical hires. He's been down that road of using overseas outsourced developers, and he's had local companies offering services in exchange for equity. But he really wants to build a skilled team locally. Money isn't the problem, it's how to find and identify sufficiently good people. The second question, perhaps is more relating to your old world, is from a founder who says they've got strong IP and a robust retail tech solution, but sales are slow and tough. And despite individual champions internally, when they do get sales, they're not seeing their technology become sufficiently embedded by clients. So there's a big risk of churn. What's going wrong? So I expect this is not the first time that you've come across either of these challenges. So could you tell us a little bit about your story and background, and then we can dive into the questions?
Yeah, I suppose it's quite interesting because having been, now having running a startup, it's not too different to, there are different challenges, but it's not too different to being part of a corporate or being part of a business or being in a turnaround business. So, I've spent all of my life in retail. I've come up from shop floor. I started off as a management trainee with W.H. Smith. I've spent 10 wonderful years at Arcadia and, really great grounding from a retail business. And I do think retail's a really strong career to have because it is so diverse. I was very lucky to be able to move from retail and retail operations into a technology role. I haven't come up from a coding background, but just from being able to analyse solutions, look at technology was really, really, really useful and beneficial for me. And that's why I think retail is a great career. And I can now use those skills in a different way. So working with a startup, and I was so privileged to be able to work with this team with a platform that I just feel is so compelling, particularly in today's when there's lots of disruption and, we're having to completely reinvent the role of the store. What is the store there for when it's competing with online and digital sales and the Amazons of this world? And it's still really very much about its kind of service and providing that personalised service, providing a great level of service and that touchy-feely experience that you get in a store. So I'm super excited, and I think my background really helps me to understand, because in lots of ways it hasn't changed from 25 years ago. My first boss, she was super, she knew her customers, she taught me all about having that personal relationship with them, being able to understand their requirements, help them with what they were looking for. And I think that's always stood me really well.
And so presumably all the technical devices that the customers are using are simply an extension of their desire to interact with you and their expectation of service.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like a different business.
No, I think it's just, but we've got different ways of connecting. So, I might be browsing and I'll be browsing for something and it takes my eye. But then I might pop into the store. But if they don't have my size and they can't fulfill from store, which they should be able to in this day and age, but if they can't, then I've still got to go back online. But it's around that I think some of the solutions that we have is not just about the technology, but it's about connecting the dots and being able to provide store staff with as much empowerment in terms of information and being able to help that customer, but then also blend that with the digital journey. So technology really helps, but you still need to make sense of what you're seeing. And that's the bit I find the most fascinating.
And have retailers kind of tried to turn into technology companies, or have they worked, when you were in an in-house role, have they looked around to the startups and perhaps to the existing big tech providers, looked to them to help solve
I think there's a balance, because I think it depends on how strategically you're keen to try new things. So there's the more traditional IT director roles have not always explored, they've kind of gone with tried and trusted partners, which is not always wrong, but it's sometimes, I think you have to have a really good blend. I think you have to have a blend of technology that's stable, robust and works, but you need to push the boundaries by working with startups, and it makes you think differently. It actually makes you question your own expertise and knowledge, and kind of it gives you that spark of doing something different. So I think that's really important.
And did you, when you were on the retailer side, did you have challenges there attracting technical talent, or were you looking more for solutions, fully formed solutions that you could buy in?
I think it depends. So in my latter roles at Burberry, I think obviously we could attract talent. Really, it was a great brand.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes first and foremost. You can attract great talent. You can build teams based around that, and you can have in-house teams as well as working externally. However, I think whether you're a small company or a large company, one of the areas that I see now is that typically you need high performance individuals, because when you're in a startup, I need someone that's going to wear different hats. I don't need someone who is just a business analyst or just a project manager or just a marketing person. I need someone that's hungry and ambitious and that wants to learn and can do different roles. However, when you're getting a high performance individual like that, you also end up with some high maintenance around managing them. And it's that kind of like, oh my gosh.
Way of putting it. I like that. I've actually kind of got an article that I refer to quite regularly about managing smart people.
Yes.
Because it is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and it is something that brings home to me, because sometimes I end up being, I kind of end up feeling I'm a bit of a school teacher and going, but these are grown men and women.
Yeah. And
you end up going back to basics and say, hi guys, look, we need to work as a team here. This is not about egos, and this is not about constantly proving who's the best, but it's around working as a team. And I think that's the piece that I found really insightful. But I think it's similar in big companies as well as small.
I think it's interesting that you pull out the thing about the generalist, because when I was building a technical team for the first time, when I was in my last CEO role, one of the challenges was I knew where I wanted to get. Like, I knew what I was trying to achieve, but I didn't necessarily know the specific skills, and particularly the technical skills that I needed to make that happen. I think I've got a much stronger sense of that now, and I think as I go into the next business, my first set of hires will probably be more experienced than my first set of hires were, because I think perhaps I was a little bit unrealistic in my expectation of what they would be able to do. And over time, I kind of learnt the importance of decent product management, and I learnt the importance of decent processes and information sharing and clear communication and expectations. But I think last time when I went out to hire, I kind of almost feel like I was thinking I was going to hire the technical solution, as opposed to that we would all build it together. And I wonder if the person asking this question is a little bit in that unknowns kind of space.
I think it's tricky. I think you do need experience. I think you have to have that balance of experience, and then you need fresh eyes and new ways of working. And I like the blend of that. So I think, I've in previous roles as well, I've had huge success with graduates and interns and apprenticeships. I think that's really, because you not only does that person grow with you But typically, you know, they actually are then a very loyal employee, and they've really kind of learned and grown very much. And then sometimes they move on, and you see them blossom. And
that's a great result. I don't think there's anything wrong with losing a young employee after 18 months or 2 years when they've taken so many steps forward and they've contributed so much.
I think it's quite powerful, and it also sees, there's an element, you need the passion first and foremost, and going back to the question in terms of what do you do, I think it is quite important to build, to get local resource if you can. I think it depends on the task in hand. So there are things that you can outsource and you can look at doing in different ways, but bringing in that local resource and working with a team that even kind of when you're looking at that globally, I think it's really important. I liken it a bit to dating, right? So in terms of trying not to be too panicky about taking the first person that comes along, but you have to have your instincts, I think, are often right, and not being rushed into making a decision with someone that your gut's telling you is not the right person, because you spend those first 3-6 months and you're kind of thinking, I knew this from the beginning, and that's where you have to make really strong decisions around the right person. And it's as much about it being a right cultural fit and that someone is aligned with the values that you want to create as a company, as it is about having the right technical skills or having the right selling skills. Is really, really important.
And being aligned with values is not this, and cultural fit is not like a cookie cutter. It's not about homogeny and everybody being the same in any way, shape or form. But it's kind of like you all share the same end desire of what success is. And in some companies that is like, we all want to make as big a bonus we can and be really, really rich. And in which case, fantastic, have a nice career, but this is not the place to do that.
And I think that's where sometimes the challenges come in with different people and high performance individuals, because you can all bring different skills, but sometimes it's around respecting. You may have completely different ways of working. Somebody over here can be a complete detail merchant, and then the other person's not. They're kind of up with the fairies, but very strategic and very visionary. But you have to respect each other's skills, and you have to respect what you bring in terms of that blend as a team. And it's not just about kind of butting heads all the time, but it is around making sure that you've got people that are excited and passionate and really want to see the company grow and get excited at every milestone and every hurdle, and don't get too deflated when there are challenges and some dips.
So when you don't have a brand in the way that Burberry did, where have you found those people? Do you go out to hackathons or universities or set up competitions? I mean, do you go out and look for them, or do you try to tempt them in, or both?
I think it's a blend. So it's a blend of having, I have a very good network, so with people. And I think one of the things, when you've worked with lots of different people across lots of, in terms of not just different brands, but you've met people along your way, I think people always come around. And one of the pieces of advice I had a long time ago was about being nice to everybody, because you never know, and this industry is quite small in terms of retail and retail technology. Typically you're bumping into people all the time. It does change, but universities, so in terms of that, graduates, in looking at internships, apprenticeships, again working with various companies who provide apprentices, I think are very strong. So again, I work with different accelerators, so you've got that constant, you bump into people. And even networking. I bumped into someone at a dinner a couple of weeks ago, and she was this lovely lady who was a data analyst, and she's kind of she's stopped, she's worked for big companies and now she's having a bit of a break, and I thought, gosh, she would be amazing. We immediately hit it off, and you kind of think, she'd be great to come in, and even if it's a transitory piece, I think you've got to be, I'm constantly, even like when you're getting served dinner, sometimes I kind of think, gosh, she would be amazing. Like, this is a lovely lady. She's serving me a coffee. But
I remember somebody stopping me in a shopping mall and doing the whole selling me makeup, doing a makeup demonstration at the end of it. You looking for a job?
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's just...
She was like, a 3-year-old offers a day. It doesn't surprise me.
It's just about skills, isn't it? And I think it's around skills of someone that's, you know, I still think social skills are so important, being able to converse, being able to talk to people of all different types of backgrounds, ages. I think I'm constantly on the hunt.
Yeah,
But
I think that I probably is very similar. I go to all the meetups and mentor at the hatcheries and the accelerator, and you know, you find great people, and sometimes people will have demonstrated that they're startup friendly because they'll have been along to a hackathon, or they'll have tried something, they'll have been on somebody's team or as an intern, and it doesn't work. But that's a great opportunity to actually say come here. And I definitely think it's really possible as a startup to be able to start to get that attractiveness of somewhere that people want to work and come to you.
Yeah, I think the challenge is to work out what you need. So, you know, if you're looking for technical people, or if you're looking for marketing or sales people, and then I do describe it as, you know, I want someone. So, for example, a recent hire we've had is, he's technical, but he's also come from a consulting background. So he's technical and he can face customers. Amazing. So for me, that's because that's what you need. You need to be able to have someone that you can sit in front of a customer and you can converse, and that's so important. So I always describe it as multiple hats, because I need people with multiple hats.
And I think that if you've got the right learning kind of mindset in somebody, then it doesn't matter necessarily specifically if they've got all the packages or programs that you're using. If they've dealt with the basics, they're going to adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think, especially in a startup, you kind of almost have to, if you write out a shopping list of every possible program this person has to have and every attribute, you're not gonna get that higher.
No, I think, you know, it's not easy, but you have to persevere. You have to persevere to get the right people. And if it doesn't, and sometimes the right people are lovely at one stage, and they might help you get to here. And then you have to look for a different set of skills to move
really
you forward.
Challenging,
so
that's
that's,
in a young company.
You know, which is
I
really
had that
hard.
with some of my early hires who were lovely.
Yes.
You know, and we were their first job, and they were great.
Yeah.
But where we went and the skills we needed, we couldn't take all of those people with us. And that was actually some of the hardest.
It is hard.
Some of the hardest partings that I have made during that is with some of those young early people,
because they're ambitious too and they're wanting to progress, but then you get to a point where you think, actually, do you know what, I have to, if I'm going to move the bar to here, I need someone completely different. I need the experience, or I need, you know, someone with different skills. And that's where, and so you sometimes have to make really hard decisions about people that have given and, you know, grown with you and, you know, have taken you on that journey, but actually you have to move somewhere else, and then you have to look somewhere else.
Is it possible, I mean, have you done the outsourcing thing and it work?
I have on, so I wasn't always a big fan of outsourcing, but no, from a service perspective at Jaeger, again, we didn't have big budget, so we actually outsourced. We had an outsourcing company that we did work really hard with, so but it's not just a handover and here you go. So we had apprentices that came in from an external company that then became part of our team, and they felt like our team members. So an on-site outsourced solution, you know, in terms of people and resources, and it worked really well for us. And also we had an outsourced service around, you know, hosting and projects, etc. That took a little bit of time to get it right. So, because when I joined, it was in a complete mess. And that's where I think you have to constantly, those people have to be part of your vision and part of they have to understand what you're trying to achieve, and you have to really partner with them and work with them to make it work. But it does work, but it's not as, there are lots of examples where it doesn't work, and I think that you have to get that blend, and it's what's right for you at the right time.
Where I've seen it not work has often been where you get literally what you ask for, even if what you asked for was wrong or was not fully scoped out or didn't make a lot of sense. And I think that probably does come back to that thing that everybody needs to understand what they're doing and why.
The communication, and it's the same being in a startup where we've got offices in Australia, New York and London. Communication is absolutely key. So it's
and
the same.
You're technical analysts in different countries.
Yeah, so you're having to, and it's the same when you work with at Burberry when we did use some offshore, companies at different times, but the communication has to be, has to be absolutely key, because otherwise, yes, you have an expectation and you get something completely different if you're not spot on, and if you don't bring people on that journey. So it's around making them feel part of what you're doing, I think, and I think that's very important.
Thank you. So perhaps if we look at the second question, which is we think we have a good product, we think we have decent software, but nobody's biting our hand off to buy it. Now, I know you and I had a conversation around this, and you told me some very interesting things around complexity and the buying unit, and how difficult it is to get traction internally when there are lots of stakeholders involved. Is that quite normal when you're buying technology? Is it quite normal for that to happen, that you have somebody that's very enthusiastic and might even kind of push the pilot through, but then it dies a death?
Yeah, and again, I think it so much depends on the size of the company. So, somewhere like Burberry, there are huge, Burberry grew and was known for innovation. So, and was known for, in the period that I was at Burberry, for IT being at the front of the bus and working strategically to really drive experimentation. And, so yes, big SAP company, big Salesforce company, but still experimenting at the edge. And I think it was it then grew up, and became more processes, and then it became really hard. So as it grew up from a spotty teenager into a blossoming adult, it had to grow up internally for governance and projects, kind of like a project office. And then it just kind of almost like lost. So it's getting that balance right, I think, is really important.
So did the younger risky companies sort of get locked out of that process, or did you sort of start to get a backlog and all of that kind of thing?
I think it was not necessarily. We were still looking at using different and using sort of like an R&D budget necessarily, but it became harder to get it through the gates, to get it signed off. So it became, the stakeholders and the process for getting, because it was fighting for lots of different, across the board, lots of different projects, and not just IT projects, but business projects, etc. So I think and that was quite insightful, because, as a brand that really embraced creativity, embraced innovation, it was how that then evolves as the brand grows, and it was growing at a rate of knots. So that is a different. So some companies, some big corporate companies are able to do that. They do have very strong innovation teams, or they have. I talked to John Berry at John Lewis, who is amazing, and he just is a very practical. He understands that it can start and grow from anywhere, and he talks a lot about having £1,200 in 12 weeks and getting something done. But that's kind of like really driving creativity and innovation, and it's kind of embedded, and lots of things don't work, but then there are other things that do work.
And I think that's the challenge perhaps sometimes for the startup or the young company, is that these are big, compelling names. I've been in that place where you think, wow, you get to add department store name here, kind of thing, as a client, and that's you made. All the rest of them will follow, and now you'll raise your next round, and you're completely on trajectory. And actually making that pilot sale is not the same as making a sale.
No.
And nor is it the same as that running its cycle and proving the ROI, not just on your metrics, because the ROI can make sense to you. You can go, look, I've saved you lots of money, but if that's not the right internal levers that measure being mattered, then that doesn't matter. Is that something A, that you've come across, and B, that you're very mindful now with your being on the other side of the table almost?
It's quite interesting, because obviously being on the other side of the table, I can see how frustrating it could be for vendors when you kind of have a great meeting and everyone's excited and you think, wow, this is fab, and you come out and you're like, yay. And then a week passes and a month passes, and there's still this inertia around moving forward. And that's, and that can be And yet when I put my other hat on and I become the CIO, and I'm thinking, well, that's because, the budget's changed or something else has come along that we've had to deal with, or another project's become more important, so it's less of a priority. And it's I can see both sides now in terms of how difficult it can be to get that. And I see so much inertia because brands are almost paralysed sometimes in terms of not knowing what to do next. We talk about with our platform that can get it up and running in 2 to 4 weeks.
Yes,
you can
drive
the, and it's so
true.
Yeah.
You're not lying. It is completely true. It's perfectly possible that from your perspective, that's completely doable.
Yeah, but it's then competing. I find a lot of retailers are digital transformation and they have to do everything and we need a single customer view, but you don't need a single customer view. And it's kind of like really finding the why of what it is, and when you're working with a brand, you need to understand their wider strategy. So you need to do that top to top, where you're working with the CEO, you're working with the CIO, the CMO, you're understanding their broader strategy, and then you can it's about trying to then plug in where you sit, and not in terms of just the technology, but actually then in trying to look at how it's going to drive revenue for them, how it's going to improve productivity or kind of really deliver that ROI that they're looking for. But it's, it is really, I find it's properly challenging to, and there are different approaches. Some people say, you shouldn't you shouldn't do a pilot, you should just go in, and have, go in with a proposal that's right from starting from the front with no pilot, and you go for guns. However, it was interesting, the question that was being posed was around that even when they're in there and they're trying to embed it, and with a champion, they're still struggling. And that's one of the things that I find I'm hugely passionate about, because I do feel that often it's not the technology at all. The technology can be amazing. The technology can do all the things that it says it will do. But unless you have embedded it properly, and unless you have onboarded it properly, and unless you continue to help them through that journey, then yes, it can churn. And that's where I feel so important, that it's so important that you have to have that kind of, and I hate the words because it's kind of a little bit cheesy, but customer success.
Yeah.
But you've got to handhold them through it, and you can't just hand the solution over. You wipe your hands and move on to the next one. You have to really help them to continually tweak their approach to make sure that what your solution is promising is actually delivering and continues to deliver again and again and again. And
I so agree with that, because I can see so much in that I personally got wrong. I mean, I got wrong. I fell hook, line and sinker for the swathe of amazing meetings, and you come back and they've said, I've been in meetings where somebody very big is going, yes, we absolutely want to do it. And I've gone straight back to that company and gone, yes, they absolutely want to do it, which in retrospect is the absolute worst thing to do. I got myself into semi-terminal trouble off the back of one of those, because that combined with raising money, everybody hears what they want to hear, including you.
Yes.
And then when it falls apart, which it probably was always going to inevitably do, and has fallen apart for reasons that have got absolutely nothing to do with you and you cannot control, it looks bad on you. But I also... because it's almost like the first question and the second question are so interlinked, because you never have enough money and you never have enough people. So you're always kind of trying to put money and people where they're most needed. And I think, the pressure is on to try to get the sales and get the sales and get the sales, and then you get them. And you're almost like, sometimes, I'm sure not in your case, and definitely not in my case, but in hypothetical cases, going like crazy to actually deliver this feature that you just sold, and to actually get it over the line when you said 2 to 4 weeks and they said brilliant, can we have it in 3, and you've gone absolutely. And that's actually really tough. And the last people that you hire are the customer success people, and then you've got to get them up to speed. It's really challenging to spend ahead for that.
I think you have to, in retrospect,
you absolutely have
so there's,
to.
there's two really important things. Building relationships is so important, and partnering, so that you feel that you're partnering with the brand and that you're really delivering, not just on a solution and a piece of technology, but on their overall vision. So really understanding that is really key. And your people, from your business analyst to your technical person to your customer success person and your salespeople, they have to resonate with that, and they have to feel that. And you have to be super resilient, because the person that just suddenly decides actually that they'll look at it again in another 3 months. But it makes me, I see it so many times that a year has passed, and actually they've not moved forward at all. And then it's like, and you kind of think, you could have, but you have to kind of think, you have to be resilient it has to be the right time for them as well. And those things are quite important.
I think you need a far wider pipeline to be working on than you would ever imagine. So if your goal is that, we need 3 paying clients, working your normal when you're dealing with retailers, I think working your normal standard sales pipeline is not enough.
Yeah, it's about, and it is all about brand awareness. So, and this is one of the things when I first came on board here, it was like, actually guys, we are great, we're really good, we have a great platform, and it is really delivering for the clients that we have on board. But if we don't do some stuff now, we won't have a pipeline in 6 months. So you have to constantly be looking at that pipeline and building that through, because you not all of the ducks will come through. Not all of them will turn into turn into prospects. Your prospects will not all turn into customers. Sorry, and it's really important then to be constantly looking at how you're growing the business, and it is hard. So yes, it's hard not to go down that route of over-promising, but you have to be focused on the product. And if you have a product and that's what you're selling, then you have to be really focused on, okay, if we're going to add this feature in, then it's going to be available there for the product, and it's going to build the product through. And I do feel really strongly that you have to, there's a question of selling ahead or not selling ahead. And I don't like to sell ahead too much in terms of what we do, because you have to tell the vision, because obviously you have a vision of where the platform's going and what you're trying to build out. But it's so focused to say, this is what we have today.
Yep.
And we did a big demo at Dreamforce a few weeks back, and it was amazing. We had 3 people that came up to us afterwards and said, okay, this is great, but how much of this is actual product? And it's like, everything you've seen on the stage is out of the box functionality.
But
none of this is smoke and mirrors.
Ask, because that's unusual.
Yes, and that was so inside. I was like, gosh, this is so. But we had a customer that was demonstrating, so it was great. It was the customers demonstrating, and it was all out of the box functionality, and that's powerful. If you can continue to build that, and then you are really demonstrating what the real USP of your product and how it is, and then you build from there.
And you're de-risking it, and you're making it really tangible and easier to buy, conceptually easier to buy. Mm-hmm. So thank you. That's been incredibly insightful. Thank you once again for sharing your wisdom with me and reminding me of all the things I got wrong, many of which I won't get wrong next time, and I'm sure some of which I will. So thank you, and every success with this business. It's great to see you on the other side of the table.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Vicky Brock and this week's guest, Cathy McCabe, your entrepreneur agony aunts. You can submit your question at vickybrock.com/podcast.